Falling concrete from a Mongkok building for the second time in 4 days. Authentic consumption voucher eligibility vetting calls or scams. Some members of the public are confused. And the first conviction under Hong Kong's national anthem law. Hello and welcome to TVB News. Concrete fell this morning from a Mongkok building to the busy street below. It's the second incident of falling concrete in 4 days involving the same building. This time, no one was injured. As Sharon Tang reports, the government will now take over the repair work if it's deemed urgent and ask for reimbursement from owners of the building later on.
Police received a report at 8 this morning that concrete had fallen from height at Po On building on Mongkok Road near Tung Choi Street. That's just 2 days after another falling concrete incident at the same building, although fewer debris was involved this time around. Officers from the Fire Services Department and the Buildings Department were sent to the scene to inspect the damage. A man living nearby told us he also saw the concrete falling from the building 2 days ago.
I thought it's overload. Somebody put there something really heavy. Maybe that's why it's fall down. I think they will figure out.
This man thinks the government should step up monitoring efforts and worries the building may pose danger to passers-by.
Up until 4 p.m., one side of the Mongkok Road was still being closed to traffic.
On Sunday, chunks of concrete fell from a 5-meter-long wall on the 16th floor of Po On building and hit a truck on the street below, injuring the driver. The government is highly concerned about the case.
See which are the cases warranting priority action by the department in terms of issuing enforcement notices, and also in terms of the department taking over some of the works as a matter of urgency and asking for reimbursement from the owners at a later stage.
The 57-year-old building was given a mandatory building inspection 9 years ago, but repair works only began in 2021. Lawmakers have slammed the government for the lack of law enforcement, adding that authorities should consider raising the penalty for building owners who fail to conduct repair works. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
The second round of consumption vouchers will be dispersed mid-July, and the government is reviewing residents' eligibility. However, police have received some 200 calls for assistance from residents who received vetting calls they believe to be scams. Some lawmakers said the vetting process is a must, but it should not cause disturbance to the public. Veronica Lin reports.
The second round of vouchers, worth $2,000, will be dispersed in 2 weeks. However, last year, there were some 70,000 residents who were deemed ineligible by the government after a vetting process. Authorities said the process will continue this time. But the vetting process is causing confusion, with some residents thinking the vetting call are scams. Ms. Kwok said she had received messages in the social media group regarding the vetting of her eligibility to receive the vouchers. She questioned whether it was a scam. Ms. Kwok said she thought it was very strange because the message asked her to call them back. These are all consistent with scams. However, what she received was not a fraudulent text, but an actual message sent by authorities. Numerous residents reported these texts and calls as scams. The Consumption Voucher Secretariat, as well as some accounting firms, will call using designated numbers for vetting purposes. Some of these numbers start with 3. If the message is relayed by text, it will only be sent from these 5 numbers. Some are prefixed with +582. Among them, the longest number from a contractor is 16 digits. The police's anti-scam helpline has received around 200 inquiries on the issue over the past month. Sheng Men-hong, senior inspector from the Commercial Crime Bureau, said, from an anti-scam perspective, it's good to see residents being so vigilant. A government spokesperson clarified that residents will not lose eligibility even if they don't respond to relevant texts and calls within 3 days. If and when residents are notified via text that their registration for the vouchers were unsuccessful, they can then appeal by submitting a written request within 14 days. Some lawmakers believe the vetting process is a must, but shouldn't cause disturbance. Lawmaker Dominic Lee said traditional methods such as registered mail should also be considered. Last year, 240,000 residents were disqualified after retrieving their mandatory provident fund early. However, for 170,000 of them, their eligibility was reinstated. If there are any questions, the government said residents should dial the consumption voucher hotline. Veronica Lin, TVB News.
Starting today, the Airport Express will run more frequently, returning to the pre-pandemic 10-minute intervals. The in-town check-in service at Hong Kong MTR Station has also partly resumed, but the service is only available during daytime until before 3 p.m. and limited to just Cathay Pacific flights. A comeback of the check-in service at Hong Kong MTR Station after more than 3 years of suspension. Right at the heart of the city, travelers can collect their boarding pass and drop off their luggage on the day of their flight. The baggage can be sent directly to their final destination.
I'm traveling to Taiwan. It's definitely more convenient because I don't need to travel all the way to the station, and so that we can check in here. We don't need to carry all the luggage.
I think it's more convenient for us if we can do in-town check-in. Save us a lot of time.
It provides another option for the tourists, so should be a good policy for the tourists. Yeah.
At Hong Kong Station here, the in-town check-in service by Cathay Pacific Airways is available every day from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. But as you can see behind me, other airlines have yet to resume such services. Airport check-in at Kowloon Station remains shuttered. Vivian Lau, CEO of an airline ground service company, said given the current manpower crunch, they will focus most of their resources at the airport. She added it is harder for them to coordinate ground crew for other airlines outside the airport because more workers are needed to handle the various boarding systems of different airlines. The Airport Express launched its service in July 1998, the same day as the Hong Kong International Airport in Chek Lap Kok began operations. In 2005, the Asia World Expo station became the fifth stop of the Airport Express. At the worst period during the pandemic, its ridership plunged from more than 40,000 passengers a day to less than 100. Starting late last year, the figure has returned to the 5-digit level. The MTR Corporation has announced a pay rise of 2.05% to 6.15% for its non-managerial staff. The salary hike takes effect this month. Most MTR employees would get a 4.1% pay increase in 2023, depending on their work performance. Those who performed well would receive bonuses. Discretionary special bonuses would be offered to eligible staff as well. The Hong Kong Railway Workers' General Union said the salary hike is much lower than the union's proposed 7%, which has taken into account inflation and salary freezes in recent years. The union questioned if the company truly values its experienced staff. The 4.1% pay increase is lower than the 4.65% salary hike for mid- and lower-tiered civil servants. CAMB earlier announced a 4.2% pay rise for all staff. A 27-year-old man has been found guilty of disrespecting the national anthem. The case marks the first conviction under Hong Kong's national anthem law. The court was told that Chen Wing-chun had distributed the protest song Glory to Hong Kong online. In a video showing Hong Kong fencing athlete Aka Cheung Ka-long receiving the gold medal in the 2021 Tokyo Olympics, Chang was accused of replacing the national anthem with a protest song. The defendant pleaded not guilty earlier. In mitigation, his lawyer said the music had no lyrics and the focus of the footage is on the fencer. When handing down the ruling, the judge said the video has some 100,000 views and the defendant has deliberately changed the music, and he clearly did not do it out of ignorance. Chang will be sentenced on July 20th, and the judge said time behind bars is likely. According to sources, the Police National Security Department has arrested 4 men for alleged conspiracy to collude with foreign forces with suspected acts of incitement. The cases are believed to be related to the police reward notices regarding 8 fugitive activists accused of violating the national security law. Reportedly, the 4 arrested are suspected to have run online shopping platforms to support the 8 self-exiled opposition figures. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese today criticized Hong Kong authorities over their pursuit of 2 activists who live in Australia.
Look, it's just unacceptable. And we are concerned about the announcements overnight that have been made. We'll continue to cooperate with China where we can, but we will disagree where we must. And we do disagree over human rights issues.
Albanese said he was concerned and disappointed by Hong Kong authorities issuing arrest warrants for Australian citizen Kevin Yam and Australian permanent resident Ted Hui, who now live in Australia. Hong Kong leader John Lee said 8 self-exiled activists would be pursued for life for alleged national security offences. Lee dismissed criticism, insisting that extraterritorial power exists in the security laws of many countries, and his government would not be swayed by comments from overseas politicians. The United Nations nuclear chief has declared safe Japan's plan to release radioactive water from the wrecked Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant into the sea. Rafael Mariano Grossi was due to visit the plant today after meeting government and fishing industry officials in Tokyo. China remains opposed to Japan's release plan. Nasvi Karim with more.
Rafael Mariano Grossi, head of the United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, shakes hands with officials from cities, NGOs, and the fishing industry. He is trying to reassure doubters that it is safe for Japan to release water from the Fukushima plant into the ocean. He told a gathering in Tokyo before visiting Fukushima that the science was sound and he doesn't have a magic wand to convince them otherwise.
What is happening is not some exception, some strange plan that has been devised only to be applied here and sold to you. This is, as certified by the IAEA, the general practice that is agreed by and observed in many places all over the world.
Japan says the 1.3 million tons of water has been filtered to remove most radioactive elements bar tritium, also known as hydrogen-3. The filtered water is to be further diluted 100 times, well below international standards, and released 1 kilometer offshore in a process that could take up to 40 years. The nuclear power plant was destroyed in the 2011 tsunami. Countries such as China are not convinced. China's ambassador to Japan, Wu Jianghao, on Tuesday urged Tokyo to suspend the discharge, while the foreign ministry asked for more transparency and the involvement of stakeholders such as China and other countries. In South Korea, a government official said Seoul respects the IAEA's announcement and that South Koreans need not be concerned. Some Koreans, though, remain against the plan. Members of civic groups protested in Seoul, wearing masks of South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. This member of the Korea Federation of Environment Movement said the IAEA has not tested other methods and that its studies were incomplete. Protests by fishing folk and environmentalists have been held in the Philippines and Indonesia and as far away as Peru.
The wastewater dumping in the Pacific Ocean give the big problem to our livelihood and then the health of the Filipino people, not only for the generation now, but also the next generation.
Nasvi Karim, TVB News.
Still ahead, Israeli forces withdrew from the West Bank city of Jenin. Heavy flooding in Chongqing's Guangzhou district on the mainland. And Hong Kong e-toll will come into use at the Cross Harbour Tunnel starting from July 23rd. Welcome back. Israel today launched airstrikes on the Gaza Strip in retaliation for rocket attacks. This after the Israeli military ended one of its largest operations in decades in Jenin at the occupied West Bank. David Garrett reports.
A massive explosion over Gaza with tensions between Israel and the Palestinians at their highest for years. Israel Defense Forces, or IDF, released their own footage of the air assaults. They say this is an attack on a Hamas weapons manufacturing facility. That was in retaliation for this. At least 5 rockets were fired from Gaza. They were intercepted by Israel's air defense system. Over the previous 2 days in the West Bank, Israel had used bulldozers, drones and troops to go door to door in search of Palestinian fighters, the largest in what Israel says is a crackdown on militants. Hundreds were forced to flee the Jenin refugee camp as the Israeli army used stun grenades and tear gas. For over a year, Israel has carried out similar, smaller raids. The army released footage of soldiers scouring the streets of Jenin. One can be seen shooting down an alley, and later a group of troops carried out a controlled explosion on what they say was the development of a homemade bomb. Communication officers say they seized weapons and cash from the camp which would have been used in attack.
This operation is only against the terror infrastructure inside Jenin camp. It's not an invasion. It's not against the Palestinian Authority. It's not against the Palestinian forces. It's only against the infrastructure and terrorists inside the Jenin camp. This is what it is.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the operation was necessary. I congratulate our brave fighters who destroyed terrorist infrastructures, he said. The Israeli leader said this may not be a one-time action. It's over for now. A convoy of trucks were filmed leaving late Tuesday. Thousands of residents live in the concentrated area. Many quickly had to flee the violence. The scene Wednesday morning shows rubble and rubbish from the raid. Now, with the Israeli army gone, those who live here are returning to a scene of devastation, to their homes, with the hope that their houses are still standing. Funerals have begun for those who did not survive. At least 12 Palestinians were killed. One Israeli soldier died. Mourners paid respects to a 17-year-old and carried his body to be buried. David Garrett, TVB News.
At least 8 Israelis were injured in a combined car ramming and stabbing attack in Israel's coastal city of Tel Aviv. The assailant was shot dead by an armed civilian. Closed-circuit TV from a cafe shows a vehicle hitting a bus stop to the left of screen. Glass is smashed when the truck deliberately crashes. People scatter in all directions in fear. The perpetrator got out of the car and began stabbing those near him. The person who carried out the attack was identified as a man in his 20s from the West Bank who entered Israel without a permit. Hamas praised the attack, saying it was a response to Israel's military operation in Jenin. People with connections to the attacker were arrested, but police said they had no further information. 10 people were killed and 38 wounded in several mass shootings across the United States ahead of the 4th of July holiday. President Joe Biden said the epidemic of gun violence needs to be addressed, calling on Republican lawmakers in Congress to negotiate with Democrats on gun reforms. Tracy Furness reports.
In Fort Worth, Texas, shots were fired into a crowd celebrating a festival in a parking lot Monday night, killing 3 and injuring 8. Police found multiple victims, including one dead, at the scene. The injured were taken to hospital.
So a little before midnight, just before July 4th, we had a shooting. It appears that we had multiple victims that were shot. Probably 3 of them were transported to Harris Southwest. 5 more victims were transported to John Peter Smith.
The reason for the shooting was not immediately known. On the streets of Philadelphia Monday night, a 40-year-old man with a rifle and extra magazines fatally shot 4 men and injured 2 children.
I was sitting in the window right here, and I looked out of the window. I'd heard gunshots, and there was a shooter right there behind my red car, shooting a pistol into this street. I couldn't see the whole corner or anything, so I wasn't sure what he was shooting at. But within seconds, there were like 50 cops in this corner trying to figure out what was going on.
The assailant also shot and killed a man in a house before taking to the streets. The gunman fired at police. They chased him for a few blocks before he surrendered.
This country needs to re-examine its conscience and find out how to get guns out of dangerous people's hands. A person walking down a city street with an AR-style rifle and shooting randomly at people while wearing a bulletproof vest with multiple magazines is a disgraceful but all too common situation in America. And I was today at Independence Hall, where they wrote that Constitution, and the Second Amendment was never intended to protect this.
And 2 people were killed and 28 injured when gunfire erupted at a block party in Baltimore Sunday morning. 3 of the injured were still in critical condition. Speaking at the National Education Association Tuesday, President Joe Biden appealed for a ban on assault weapons.
Congress needs to step up, pass common sense gun safety laws to protect our kids and educators. Banning assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, extensive background checks, they're part of the answer.
Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Chongqing's Guangzhou district has been ravaged by heavy rainstorms, leading to 15 deaths with 4 people still missing. Guangzhou was hit by heavy rainstorms with a maximum precipitation reaching 261.2 millimeters. More than 38,000 people were affected, with more than 10,000 being evacuated because of floods. Multiple roads are now blocked and houses collapsed. Economic losses have been put at over 200 million yuan. President Xi Jinping has instructed authorities to step up flood prevention measures and offer prompt rescue and relief services. Starting July 23rd, a free-float tolling Hong Kong e-toll system will be implemented at the Cross Harbour Tunnel. The Transport Department said the roadway will be temporarily closed in both directions between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. on the day of its launch. Authorities plan to extend the Hong Kong e-toll system to the Western Harbour Crossing and Eastern Harbour Crossing next month. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.